with a flashlight trying to swap his heaters for the
Well,
next
no
hour.
stamps are terrible.
Yeah, yeah. Get up in the morning and there's 2 kids who had slept on the beach.
Should we call the meeting to order? Roll call been taken?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of minutes of the June 3rd, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, if we don't have any additions or corrections, I go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second?
Nope. Then a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item 4.1, public hearing, review, and possible recommendation. Tim Torkelson for the car store. So at this time, I'd like to open up the,
You skipped 4.
4-1 is not me.
oh, wow. I'm really trying to move this along, aren't I? Whoops. See, it's this scrolling up and down. I'll use that as an excuse. All right, item 4. No, item 3, other communications. Okay, item 4. Consider building permit application for exterior renovations to the commercial store east face at 323 East Walworth Avenue, which is within the Downtown Design Overlay Zoning District. Applicant is Renee Downing. So Renee, would you like to speak your piece?
That's why you couldn't figure out what it was, because it was me.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know, I haven't been to one of these meetings in a long time, but I would like to get exterior windows put on my building on the east side. 2 little ones, more toward the back than the front, to bring in more light and more air into the building so my students are happy and it doesn't smell like mildew coming up from the basement.
Yes, I read that. Now you say little windows. Is that in compliance to what, I guess with staff or with T in regards to that? Is there any questions about that?
I don't know.
Denise?
What side, it's been suggested to us that you kind of keep a portion for the windows. Are you looking, what size were they?
They're 4 foot high, 5 foot wide, and there's 2 of them.
Wait,
What?
Yeah.
this is a public hearing, and I'm sure people can't hear you guys. So if you're going to ask questions, you need to get up there near the microphone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, so Denise, you?
It is. T, do you know what dimensions the original, like the original windows on the side were? Were they like 3 by?
They're a little bit smaller than that.
So
3 by 5? 3 by 6? I guess the question is Renee, could you put 2 windows together at those dimensions and fit in those areas that you were looking at?
No, not to look good from the inside.
So we have 2 3 by 5 windows, and we want to add 2 additional 4 by 6 windows, or we want to replace the 3 by 5.
There are no windows currently, but there used to be, however many years ago. Right now, there are no windows, and I want to put 2 in.
Oh, so what's the 3 by 5 window you're talking about?
There were windows, they were covered up,
Oh, I see.
long time ago.
So there used to be some windows on that side of the building. There are no longer windows there. They're bricked in and then stuccoed over. So most of the time when you look in our historical district overlay, we're really concerned about the front more so than the side. And actually with where she's at, she's got that vacant lot between the post office and where her building is. So, and she's aware of it, that someday somebody could build right up next to her, and then the window, I guess, wouldn't do her much good at that point. But she's willing to take that chance with it. So.
At least I'll get more customers in the meantime.
So, to be clear, let me ask a question. Prior to you guys ever being there, H.H. West was there a long time, and those windows weren't there when H.H. West was there, okay? So what we're talking about is there were historic casements on that side of the building, and you can walk down the whole street and see bricked-in historic casement windows that have either been replaced or not replaced, right? So what the proposal here is to replace them by non-casement sliding windows. That was what was submitted in our packet, okay? The Home Depot windows that were identified are non-casement sliding, windows that work for your purpose,
Yep,
right?
correct.
5 feet and 5 feet by 4 feet. And so what was unclear to me, which I'd like to understand as part of the public hearing process, is the position concerning the downtown overlay district window requirement from the city's staff perspective, that they want casement windows put in that have a vertical architectural perspective as opposed to a horizontal architectural perspective. In other words, the windows, or in today's parlance, the windows that were originally there were landscape. The applicant would like portrait windows, okay, if we're thinking about how we're told to print. So what is the city's perspective, city staff's perspective on that?
I would have preferred vertical, but they didn't have the style I wanted.
Okay. And it didn't satisfy what you were trying to do inside your
Right.
facility,
So
right?
Right.
And I would say normally what staff would usually recommend is that she would put windows filled into that area where the bricks have been put in, and kind of do that same size, but because of the interior of her building and the remodeling that they've done, that doesn't work for her. And I think because it's not on that street frontage, I think the staff probably feels that we'd give a little bit more latitude with that. The street side, we're very, very strict with. This, when people are in the back and on the sides, most people don't really have a side. She's kind of a unique situation with having that side.
Right. So if I can just ask one further question. I took 2 other photos just even walking to here. And we do have examples in other locations. So this is a more prominent side location. This is the corner of Third and Walworth. I've only lived for 20-some years, and I can't get those streets going the right way. But which is filled with a plate glass window, and then prominently against the historic park that we're going to spend money to replan, we have almost exactly the same casement windows, non-casement windows, but smaller in size. So my question is, how are we going to interpret this for these for these building side windows? Or how do you want to?
I think if we look back at when we were talking about, I think the building on Main Street and Walworth, when that was considered, and we looked at the back side of the wall, there was a decision made to allow for different materials than we normally would. And the idea there was we really looked at street frontages. So it really didn't matter if it was a side or the rear. If it was on a street frontage, then we were really concerned that would be our priority to make sure that those sides and fronts that are on the street be brought back to as close as possible. There's still, I think, a desire to the extent that there's that, you know, if you can get the windows and and it can meet their needs and they can be more historic in nature, which Renee just said that she actually would have
Correct,
liked better, you know, that we want to encourage that. But I think an interior, if you're a side wall or the rear wall that's not on a street frontage, if we're going to give some leeway, those would be probably the most appropriate areas to consider.
Thank you.
So we see two windows. Are we talking about having 4 windows, 2 together, closer, and 2 there? Or, I mean, what's, no, I know, but I think there was, because,
This was in there.
yeah, but I mean, it's too big,
Right. Got it.
so to keep it in conformity was more 2 windows, side by side, instead of 2 bigger ones. That was a thought. But that, obviously, I'm just throwing that out there.
If you could see the inside of the room we're putting it in, it wouldn't work.
So can I ask T, can I ask you a question? The blue squares on the, which is unfair to people who don't have the material in front of them, but the blue squares on the material that was in our packet and in the agenda packet in the
Right.
Delavan site, Delavan city site, are those your understanding of where the,
That's the placement of where she wants the windows approximately. I mean, I don't think it's like an exact, but it's pretty close as to what,
okay.
pretty close to where she drew them in, yes.
So the top of those windows is higher than the casements on the first floor historically, according to this window.
According to that drawing,
Right.
yes.
How tall is the interior of the room?
I don't know off the top of my head. The
Can you
ceiling-
reach the ceiling?
Yeah, this will, you mean the windows?
No, you.
No, the ceiling's really high.
Okay,
It's higher than this.
yeah, okay. And I'd like to clarify one point that staff said. They said this is a vacant lot that could be built upon, and I think it's a government lot, right?
It's owned by the post office.
Right. Which, they could sell it. Who knows? We may need the money later.
They could build on it.
Does anybody have any questions? So, Renee, are you satisfied with what staff has recommended? Are you sure what staff has recommended?
I don't know what staff has recommended.
Well, then we need some clarification on that.
I think what Renee has represented here is that the staff's recommendation would not work in the interior of the building, because I think we were, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were looking at a different window layout on the staff recommendation, or? It would be more reminiscent, thank you, reminiscent of the windows there, or at least the design of the windows there. And what's been indicated is that you actually looked for encasement windows and not casement window. Is there any window options that would bring it more into the historic character of the original framework of the windows?
You mean the size?
Size, you know, yeah, maybe a little bit that would fit into a little bit, 2 windows together. Is there anything that would work for you that would be more in keeping with the historic character of the windows that were originally there?
No, not that I've looked at the different sizes of windows, and from the inside of the room, these that I want to put in look perfect aesthetically. Anything else that looks close to what was already out there is gonna look ridiculous on the inside. It's not even gonna be fully in one room. It'll be like on a wall on the inside, you know, because we changed around the inside of the place.
I guess the question is if at the new location, if you redesigned it to fit more with the style of the windows, the style of the original or historic more shaped windows, would that work?
No.
So you're looking to reduce the size of the windows of what the stucco openings are now?
No, the windows that we want to put in are bigger than what was in before. There was like a door and two small, really small windows before, is what it looked like.
Okay. So you've built a wall that covers half of one of those windows then?
Somebody else built a wall that covered all the windows.
Inside the building?
No, there never were windows when we bought the building.
I'm not talking about the enclosed holes right now. The interior walls. You have built walls that come up to the stucco openings then? So like if you opened up that old hole from the outside, you have a wall that splits it.
There's, we didn't do anything to change what was there before. When we bought it, it was just a flat drywall wall and then brick on the outside. So I don't know what's gonna be in between there. The mason that came and looked at it, he wasn't sure either. He was just gonna have to cut into it and make a frame.
Because you keep saying that it's gonna look silly on the inside.
We have lights on the inside on the walls, and so the windows have to look bright between those lights, and we moved some of the walls. We created new walls on the inside that separate the front part of the main floor from the back part, and so like that floor plan wasn't the way it was whenever those windows existed. So it's just, they're not gonna be centered, they're not gonna be between the lights. They might be in the middle of where one of the lights are if we put them where the windows used to be.
You don't have any,
Yeah, I just want to find it.
that wouldn't be purposeful.
You want to see this?
Oh yeah, I have that picture, yeah. Or a picture like it. But looking from the outside, you can't see what she's talking about on the inside.
Right.
Wanna go take a walk over there right now?
Can I
Okay.
say something?
So, the windows are gonna be the way you wanna put them, they'll be aesthetically fine for the inside, but from the pictures I've seen, they look ridiculous on the outside, correct or no?
That's your opinion.
But they
I
look,
mean, they don't match the top, the heights of the other windows or anything.
so they'd be consistent with the rest of the windows in the downtown design district, which is notorious for windows placed in positions where the historic windows weren't. And so this isn't a public hearing. So my perspective related to this is that I agree that the overarching goal of the downtown design district as it was originally envisioned and as we were reminded in the material sent sent last week, was that the building fronts of the downtown design district would be across time attempted to be brought back to some historic standard, right? We can argue about, and I've served on that district before, we can argue about what it should be restored to, et cetera. And that is a principle that I think has been not consistently applied across time. But but the rules related to business owners when it comes to non-building fronts have across time been applied haphazardly and generally with a principle that what services the building's present use is to be considered. And I think in this case, there was a recommendation that we look at similar window applications to what's existing on the building. If you look at what's existing on the building, there are white frame slide up and down casement windows on the second floor, okay? The applicant has attempted to find, it has found white framed windows, which are equivalent to what's on her second story, but they are non-casement because she wants to cover a wider space. I've identified to the board members pictures of several examples in the downtown design district where there have been accepted window forms outside of casement types, where casement types would have been previously required if we were downtown Nantucket and saying that everything needed to look the way it did in 1880, which is not the way we've ran this regulation. The staff sent us a series of rules as support documentation related to this, and the only rule on glazing that can be pointed to is that along Walworth Avenue, which this isn't, between Main Street and Fifth Street, clear or slightly tinted glass or related glazing material shall be used. Mirrored glass, smoked glass, or heavily tinted glass shall not be permitted. The applicant is not asking for any of those things. She demonstrated in her application, if there is an issue with the white trim, that it's very minimal. And so I think that in this case, where we've already demonstrated that we'll accept windows like this on other properties, right? Where she's made an effort to see, is there a better solution than the one I have to make my building be more historic than it is now? That we ought to accede to her property right and approve this window type. Otherwise, not doing so would be saying we're going to have a higher standard for that property than others that we've demonstrated before. So that's my perspective.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I had some, but Kevin hit all the high points. for me.
Yeah. Said very well. Well, I feel the same way.
Denise has a question, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Denise.
Just want to make one comment, is that in the past, there may have been things that in the future we would not want to approve. I really do think that we should be making sure that we're dealing with facades that are not adjacent to a frontage, because I think we should be applying, we more recently had these as historic districts and on the National Register, so I do think that we should be taking care that any street frontage facades, that even if we've made mistakes in the past, that we don't continue those mistakes in the future. And so, you know, I agree with everything that's been said, but I do think that we do need to be careful, and that just because you made maybe a bad decision in the past doesn't mean as you go forward that you don't want to correct it. In this case, I think the staff is very supportive of the direction being taken, but just wanted to go on record on that.
Yes, and that after they've approved it. Sorry.
All right. Any other questions from staff? Renee? Anybody on the commission? So does someone,
Well, I'll make a motion, but it's not the motion recommended. Okay, I'd move to approve the new window installation design on the east face of the commercial building at 323 East Walworth Avenue as proposed by the appellant.
Second.
it's been a motion and a second, any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now to item 5, public hearing, review, and possible recommendation, Tim Torkelson for the car store. At this time, open up the public hearing. Would the applicant like to say a few words?
I don't think I need to. Not sure what. We supplied architectural plans to the city, so we're here now to review that, I guess. And if there's any questions on them.
All right. Anyone else in the audience care to speak on this project? T, do you want to explain more in detail?
We don't have a digital copy of this yet, right? Because I know you took a picture.
Did you not get a digital copy? No.
Warren was supposed to get us one.
a picture and put it in. Okay, he has them. I know he has them because he supplied them to different, okay.
Yeah, on this one, we were,
I might have it, but.
okay, no, that, they have a picture of it, so, fine on that. Staff was fine, Mark, if I remember right, on everything with that, we were just waiting for some stuff from Warren.
Right, we still need the we still need the right-of-way dedication along Racine Street, which is one of the recommended conditions. But the drawing, the dimensions of everything that was submitted does meet the zoning code. The recommendations are on there as far as the time frame for getting the paving done, because this is in the wellhead protection area. And those were some of the recommendations on the memo.
So, can I ask Mark a question related to that? So, if I recall, when there's been a previous action, right? And the previous action was you can operate as long as you come here by this date.
Correct.
Right.
He's currently operating under a temporary
Right,
permit.
right. And so what we're saying is that on the conditions of approval, that we basically are providing another year. Is that correct?
For the paving, correct.
And the landscaping?
Yes.
The planning.
Which is one piece, I understand, but, yeah. And what does the wellhead district have to do with that timing? That's my question to you.
I don't know if it's the wellhead has to do with the timing. It's the wellhead protection district is is one of the concerns with having an unpaved area for vehicle storage.
Oh, okay, so a timing sooner than that isn't required. I mean, there's no seasonal reason why the wellhead district would care.
True,
Right,
yes.
okay, thank you.
Didn't you purchase some of that land behind the building? Did you, or I thought there was?
I didn't purchase anything additional as of yet, no.
Okay, but there's intent to,
I talked to Raleigh,
okay,
but
Yeah.
that's not something I need to do. There's enough room.
okay.
It's just, if they're not gonna use it, it's just sitting there empty and, you know.
Yeah.
So that's a future thing.
And-
Okay.
So right now, you know, I had, Warren did the plans, we submitted the plans, so you guys have the plans. Everything met, there was a couple things, I need to plant a couple trees, so I went right to Warren from the meeting here, and he was gonna add 2 trees, and, I know I have to dedicate it, quitclaim deed, you know, the donated property. I'm trying to secure, excavators. It seems like they're hard to get, and I'm not, in that field. I'm working with somebody and we're getting closer, so I'm pretty much, waiting to secure an excavator, so then we can apply for permits. I can move ahead with the dedication of the property, you know, to the city, all at one time. I wanna make sure I've got it lined up and it's moving forward before I just, you know, I wanna do it all at one time, so. I'm getting close with that. I've gotten estimates from excavators and I'm waiting for one guy that is promising me it's close. But, so in the meantime, I have stopped selling cars there, honestly. Just because, yeah, it's just, I want it to look better, so I don't wanna sell cars there. So I've pretty much, I have a license to sell cars there. I could, I have some sitting there. I don't have it manned at this point. I think the other thing on the agenda was a multi-use, or
Right.
I read in there. So I have some detailers that detail cars for me currently. They're looking for a second location to do that. So in our meeting, I said, in the meantime, can I just lease the building for detailing? I think it falls under I think it's already zoned for that. I don't think there's any, so I just asked that question. So if there's any concerns about that, I guess.
And that was where the group development aspect comes in. It's more than one business in one location.
And so the answer, Mark, is that if there are any units for display or sale, that's one business, right? And secondly, if there is a business owned separately for detailing, that's a second business.
That would be a correct interpretation, yes.
So, okay.
So I guess moving forward, if these guys were to lease the building from me and they're detailing, at this point, I wouldn't, and regardless, I wouldn't be selling cars there until I get the lot, because I just want the lot done first, okay? So, but moving forward, once I open up the car lot fully, can they remain there? Or, you know, can we both be there or not? That's pretty, I don't have a mechanic there now, so the shop is open. So I don't know.
If there's 2 businesses operating there, it needs a conditional use permit as a group development. Yes, which this would cover.
Which
yes.
that covers in number 3.
So I have a question on the layout. So because there is a detailing operation proposed, the layout provides for access all the way around the detailing building, right? So if I enter the lot from Racine Street, there's a requirement for an open lane all the way around the building, right?
Right.
And the north side of the building, west side, south side, east side. Have you looked carefully at the dimensions of the new curb lot and your ability to display cars in front of that drive?
Yes.
And you're comfortable with it?
No, but it'll work.
So like you could basically display 10 cars, I'm just guessing.
I don't think that many in the front.
Okay, so,
because I'm losing too much.
yeah,
So I think they're gonna have to be angled pretty good. So maybe I'm gonna fit 6 or 7 cars in the very front.
so you recognize that?
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
that, yes. That's why I kinda slowed down on this a little bit. It just, it's a lot of money to spend to lose, you know.
Well, you don't really have a choice, right?
I don't think, well, I don't know. Do I do nothing and then it's just business local? And it falls under that and I don't do a car lot there, I don't know. Guess that would be a choice. That's not what I'd like to do.
Right.
But depending on what it would cost, I had one estimate for excavating and it was ridiculous. And that was before asphalt and curb and gutter and everything else.
And the building demolition and movement to the back of the lot's prohibitive, so it's like, so you couldn't demolish the building, relocate to the back of the lot. It would be,
Yeah, no.
yeah. Wait, okay, go.
I think it'll still work and there's plenty of room to drive around it. I think the rescue squad wanted 17 or 18 foot. And I think when I proposed it, I asked if it could be 15. 15 foot, right away, all the way around the building, you know, from entrances and exits. Just because the highway roads are 12 foot wide, right? Single lane highways are 12 feet wide. Fire trucks, ambulance, they all fit on that. So why would I have to be 17 or 18, I think it was, around my building?
It's for our outriggers on our ladder trucks. They're not.
I don't know what that is, but
Our ladder truck has outriggers.
you wouldn't park on my building though, you park on the street. A ladder truck's not gonna come in if my place is on fire,
Plus, we need
into it.
turning radiuses too.
But again, I don't think you'd run a fire truck on my property. Ambulance, no problem, and even a smaller fire truck. I'm just saying, and it's not that, but, 2 feet, when I'm giving up a lot, it's, every foot counts. So that was my only request, I believe, was 15 feet. And there's a fire hydrant right in the front. And I mean, the road, I don't think a truck would come on my lot to put a fire out, on my lot. So. I don't know if that's even in there, Mark, or not. What's that? The 15 when we talked about it. I don't know if you guys saw it.
I think it's 17, I think one area that was a 16.
60-foot wide drive.
I can, if you guys wanted to table this, we can get Warren to get
No, no,
digital
no,
copies
no,
so you
but
could see it.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Any questions? for-
Yeah, I just have one more. So was the fire department okay with the proposed change?
Yes, fire department was okay. Yes.
Okay.
Any other comments from staff?
I think the staff's, I just had clarification or wanted Mark to clarify, is each of those individual uses are both in-service vehicle, are still service for vehicles. So conditional use is needed for either or of those uses, right? Plus the group.
Sure, yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that there's no permitted, none of the uses that are proposed are permitted by right. They're, I think they're all three, or, okay. just-
Right, I mean,
Just-
Denise, I think the last time that this matter was before us, outdoor display in this location required a conditional use on
Right,
it, so.
right. And
Right.
interior vehicle also requires a condition. I just wanted to clarify, because I think there was representation that one of them was a permitted
Right.
use, and that is not correct. And two is, I think just the staff really is feels that either in conjunction that those actions of the council and that dedication should be going hand in hand, so that both are accomplished at one time.
All right, anybody else in the audience? Care to speak? I will close the public hearing at this time. Move on to review and possible recommendation of common council regarding a request to amend existing conditional use permit at 1346 Racine Street, allowing a group development for a multi-tenant building containing in-vehicle sales or service and outdoor display land uses for the Delavan car store and associated vehicle preparation within the business local zoning district with a wellhead protection overlay. Applicant is Tim Torkelson for the car store. I guess I have a question.
So somebody has to make a motion.
Right. Someone care to make a motion first?
We're going with the recommended action, correct then?
Yeah.
So I move to approve this, subject to the following conditional use findings below. Under recommended conditional use findings, the conditional use request for the proposed in-vehicle sales or service land use for the auto detailing, the proposed vehicle sales land use, and the proposed group development to allow each land use to be conducted by a distinct business. Applicant Tim Torkelson, subject to the following conditions of approval below in our packet.
And that includes the recommended conditions of below.
The three conditions of approval.
Well, there's, yeah, then there's, the question I was gonna ask, that the site plan and the pavement all be done next year on by October 31st. Do you anticipate it possibly doing before that?
I'm anticipating the grading of it this year, getting it graded and ready. Depending on the cost and weather and everything else, I mean, I'll do as much as I can. I think with grading, maybe it would be better for it to sit, Warren said, you know, it'd be
Yeah.
good for it to sit for a while. So I don't think October is unrealistic whatsoever. Obviously, the sooner I get it up and going,
The more-
the better for me.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. All right.
I have a question now. Mark, does the group development right, naturally end if the property's transferred?
If it's a limited conditional use permit, yes.
Is this a limited use permit,
The
limited condition?
the recommendation, I believe, was for a limited because of the car sales, display sales. The council has been fairly consistent that automobile sales are limited conditional use permits.
And that does not transfer with a sale of the property, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So if the property's sold, the first use, which is in-vehicle sales and service, disappears.
I believe the way.
Without a new limited use.
If it
But
were.
the detailing limited use, the detail conditional use could be transferred.
That would be a recommendation that this commission
No,
may
no,
wish to
no,
make to council.
the
but
way the law is, the way the rules have been interpreted today.
I don't believe we've had
So,
one that was multiple before.
right, so, I had a question. When your questions are finished, I'm gonna suggest
No,
an amendment.
I'm good. Anybody else have any questions? Did you get a second? Oh, was there a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
Okay. Kevin?
So I'd amend that the group development, conditional use or whatever is that correct, Mark?
They're all conditional uses,
Right.
yes.
That the group development provision of the conditional use would expire at property transfer.
And if the conditional use
So is
permit
there
is
a
issued as
second for my
limited,
amendment?
right, if it was issued as limited, it would expire if it transfers, yes.
But the auto detailing, so if I'm operating his facility as an auto detail shop, that's within my right as a property owner? Or is it a conditional use?
It's in-vehicle sales and service, which is a conditional use.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. Okay, thanks.
It's a limited conditional use, right?
Right.
That is up to the council, yes. The council can decide whether to make it a regular conditional use permit, which stays with the property, or a limited.
I'm sorry.
Which only goes with the property owner, and it expires if the property is transferred.
So Mel, I'm sorry.
So, but this is a limited conditional use. Yeah.
That is what is proposed, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
What I said doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
matter,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it doesn't say
We didn't-
limited,
We didn't make it limited.
but I think, yeah, you could amend your motion to say limited conditional use.
Right.
Is that, my question, not that it matters, I don't have any, like, master plan here, other than to run my car lot, I'm not looking to sell it or anything like that, but, is that normal for all car dealers in the city?
That's
So
what he-
everybody's limited conditional use, so if Ford wanted to sell Ford to another guy, they have to come in and apply for a limited conditional use? Same. all of
Same
them.
thing, yeah.
Yep.
I didn't see in the business local where, I thought it was sales and outside display of cars for sale. I thought that was where it wasn't under business local. I thought repairing cars or inside service was under the business local, but that's what I thought I read, but maybe I was wrong. Which is, but either way, it's fine. It's limited. It'll work with what we're doing anyways.
Yeah. All right, so there is a motion, a second. Any other discussion? If, oh, yep.
I will amend it to make it to the limited conditional use then.
And I would amend my second.
Okay. Good, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Number 7, all right, I can do that. All right, public hearing, review, and possible recommendation, Denise Morris for Russ Blakely.
6, you need to go back to 6.
No, they skipped.
We're gonna skip to 7.
Oh.
She's been here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, so I will open up the public hearing on a request for a conditional use permit for an office land use at 67 East Walworth Avenue within the Business Central zoning district. Applicant is Denise Morris for Russ Blakely.
Good evening. We, meaning Russ Blakely, owns the property at 67 East Walworth and has for quite some time. He has had it for sale since 2013. It has not sold. Multiple reasons, many people wanting it as a house. It's zoned part commercial and upstairs part residential. Earlier this year, we were asked to vacate the offices we currently had at 1501 East Wisconsin Street here in Delavan. At that point, Russ said, let's check into getting our office moved over here. I've worked closely with T to get everything compliant. I did not move in until we received our occupancy permit. I understood with T's help that we needed to have a retail space. I have opened a consignment art gallery on the main floor, and I have my office in another room of the main floor. Now, our goal is to have, if possible, strictly the office. Russ also owns a trucking company, which the trucks are currently running out of Kentucky, and I'm doing all the paperwork. So it's all sent to me. We have a driver who brings paperwork back and forth who lives in the area. I'm also emailed things. The goal, if possible, is to continue to have our office run out of this house. As far as walk-in foot traffic, which T and I have discussed, I would prefer to not have to do the store if possible, but I'm trying very hard to be very compliant. Of course, by I mean the company's foot traffic would be our insurance people, our drivers coming in, you know, sales representatives, things like that. So there is a small amount of foot traffic that my office would generate. I really have not had, I've had my office open, my store open since a week after I moved into the property. I moved in on the 15th of August. I opened up like the 22nd of August. I've had one person walk in, and I've sold one item, which my driver bought. But my point is, we are trying very hard to improve this property, which is a historical, beautiful building. I've done tons of work to it. We're cleaning up the outside as well as the inside. I would really hope that the city would rather see it taken care of and be occupied than sit empty and fall to disarray. If you have any questions, please let me know.
I'm sure we will.
So, I don't know who Russ Blakely is.
He's my boss, owner of the building.
No, I mean, and I don't know what the business is because, what business are,
DR Plastics Incorporated is the name of the business that he owns also,
right,
which was located on Wisconsin Street before.
and is that business no longer operating?
The office, in fact, the office that I'm in is DR Plastics. I work for DR Plastics, and DR Plastics has opened the store.
So it's not a manufacturing business?
Absolutely not. We're a transportation company, sir.
Okay.
We strictly do trucking.
And so so you're a transportation company,
Correct,
which is a service company?
correct.
Right.
I don't want to say anybody in the audience, but would like to speak for or against this proposal.
So, Russ is in Frankfurt,
That's correct. He lives in Kentucky.
right?
So I am basically the Lone Ranger over here.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Business Central is kind of a unique zoning district, and it does encourage more, it does allow for professional offices, but it is clear in talking to Mike Slavny that the types of offices that are permitted by right are those that are really walk-in generated, that are really generating a fairly regular basis, the public, as well as retail is also allowed as a permitted use. I think the one concern is that, you know, our downtown, it relies on that pedestrian traffic and those types of business that are going to generate pedestrian traffic. We do allow, as a conditional use office, We have talked about it, is that normally, just like residential, we would recommend that the office uses be on the second floor and not on the ground floor, which is really your pedestrian level. So the staff is recommending that, consideration be given if they want to use the second floor for offices, or if right now what they're doing is incorporating commercial use or retail use in conjunction with the office, which is serving for both purposes, for the retail function also. But I guess just a little concerned in terms of the downtown to be, to be looking at offices that aren't generally open to the public, to have them on the ground floor, and that's not really consistent with the goal in terms of the types of business uses that are being looked at in that zoning district.
What's been in this building prior?
Building was originally residential, which was an existing use, non-conforming existing use. We went through a PIP for GDP and a PIP to allow for the prior tenant, which was our understanding at that point, was looking to be a contract purchaser of the house to provide for some additional use of the house for residential purposes, with the understanding they were to build, which came to the Plan Commission, were to build basically an artisan studio on the slab. So they were still supposed to have some retail in the house, but the majority of the retail would have been on that artisan, which would have been added. The slab was put in, the building was never constructed. We gave them an extension. They had a certain period of time. We gave them an extension, and again, they ended up vacating the house and never completing the requirements of the PIP.
So up to this point, it's really only been a residential address?
But it was also vacant. So it has most of the time it was vacant for several years, and that's what really stops the residential. Once you have not used that use, so you have a non-conforming use, once you've exceeded 1 year in terms of that use being applicable to that site, you use that right of the non-conforming.
So, can I ask Denise a question though? So, that's always been a problem, like block, right?
Which
What-
Denise? Sorry.
So that's always been a problem block in terms of whether it's a downtown block or a residential block, right?
No, that it's clearly under the comprehensive plan that it is business central, under our comp plan as well as with the zoning.
The face of Walworth Avenue or one house in on Terrace? So where's the map draw the border?
It's everything that faces Walworth Avenue from Terrace Street to Main on the north side.
Right,
Is
and
it-
that's on the other side of Terrace.
No, this is the corner of Main and Walworth Avenue, northwest corner.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the beautiful soon-to-be-destroyed building is also commercial.
It's next to Temperance, and then there's some additional commercial towards the end of that, further down on that side.
Across the street, what use is permitted? So across Walworth Avenue, what use is permitted?
It's RS5.
And one house inside that?
RS5,
West.
except for the chamber building.
Right. So you describe the street face on both sides as mixed use. So if you were looking at Walworth Avenue,
On the south side would be RS5 and the north side would be Business Central.
so it's mixed use.
I'm not sure, I mean,
So if you
normally,
look
no.
across the street, do you think that person's your neighbor? No, they live in a different zoning district. So you have residential on one side of the street, you have business district on the other side of the street. There's no walking traffic, commercial walking traffic, from the park down to the mill pond. Okay? So for us to say that we're gonna violate what we expect in the central business district of not having a walk-in business, commercial use on that property, I have questions about whether we're being just draconian in applying rules versus what the real situation is in that part of the city. The highest use of that sidewalk is kids walking to the mill pond. It's not people continuing to stroll, hoping they're gonna find some retail shop.
It's across from a park which we're looking to renovate to create more event as an event for our, encourage more people. We have had a lot of renovation in that area in terms of across the street, in terms of the rehabilitation, the renovations of several of those buildings on the other side of the street.
So what would be a proposed use for the first floor that would be economically viable, that would provide for walk-in traffic?
Could have a retail shop there.
So how many retail shops are empty between Second and Third?
Between Second and Third, there may
On
be
Walworth
one.
Avenue.
On Walworth.
Yeah.
Second and Third, there are two.
How big?
One just became vacated, and I believe there's a purchaser of that
I think
building.
you miscounted the amount of square foot available at the corner of Third and Walworth.
Five a dime?
Well, the dime store. Right. However, that shouldn't have been vacated. We've got a different issue there. So,
My point
not
is,
because of lack of interest.
There's not an economic demand for walk-in retail there. You've got a maintaining commercial use proposal that the city wants to hold up because it's not walk-in, it's an office. I don't get it.
If I could just ask Mr. Armstrong a question. Are you, I just want to understand where your end point is here. If you don't want it to be walk-in retail, are you suggesting that we should move it back to residential?
No, I think the proposal, which was from the applicant, that it be office.
Okay.
Commercial
I just wanted to make
office
sure that's where you were going.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Right?
I
mean,
agree.
There's a space between Second and Third, on Walworth Avenue that's an architect's office. I don't know if it's on the first floor. Or
Second floor.
Second floor, right.
There's,
I mean, there's lawyers' offices
Oh, yeah.
on McDowell and Second Street
Yep.
that are walk-in as needed,
Absolutely.
right? I mean,
again, and
I
would-
appreciate,
I
I
would-
appreciate
yeah.
what you're
And what I want to just say is that the more that you create, the more spaces you lose, the harder it is to keep the synergy of the downtown to make it viable.
And I
So
would agree if we were in a square footage drought. We're not in a square footage drought downtown.
So I was going to make the recommendation, if it is considered, that be considered on limited use basis. So if we are successful and the need and for more retail space is generated, that at least we don't have it continue to be sold for that with at least some without some consideration, so that it can be reevaluated if the ownership changes. So that would at least allow it to be usable at this point, but would allow us that in 5 years, that may change, and that you may be looking for that retail space, a more retail that would be generating much more foot traffic to support that area in the back, at that location.
Go ahead, John.
I just wanna make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So your proposal is to allow it to be office and a limited conditional use, whatever, take away the retail or take away the requirement that they have to do retail at this point, but if the ownership changes, we can revert back.
Right. And that is based on the discussion, I think the desire for the Plan Commission, that would be a good ground that would allow us to, at least during this interim when might be space available and we haven't proven the need for it, allows that person to be able to use it for a business purpose on a limited basis, though, so it can be reevaluated at a later date if it sells, or if they end up wanting to put someone else in.
The applicant, Denise,
Yes.
you had mentioned something about you currently have a store there now?
I currently have a consignment art sale
Okay.
there. It's not something I choose to do, but I was absolutely adamant on being compliant to the city's rules. I needed to get my office going as well. I worked really hard with T to get everything, on the up and up and do it the right way. So yes, I do. And I'd rather not have to do it, but it won't kill me, if I have to. But there is no foot traffic there.
So I congratulate you on avoiding the catch-22, right? I mean, that was,
It's been a lot of work.
yeah.
But I'm really trying to do the right thing. I'm trying very hard to maintain the property and use it. It's just a shame to have such a nice house sitting there empty. And I think there's like 6 different office or buildings in downtown Delavan itself. And you look down that street, you see houses. You don't see business fronts, you see houses. You look across the street and down the street, you see houses. You don't see business fronts.
Yeah.
So
I've lived here since '86, and I would never consider that area non-residential.
I agree. I don't understand why it was ever changed. My opinion, not that it matters, but as far as it was residential and then empty for 2 years, or 3 years or whatever it was, but that's because it was for sale and those people reneged on the contract. So it was empty because it was for sale. But, we would really like to be able to run our office out of there and be part of the community.
So the recommendations will be a little different, not limited to the second floor. And,
So we closed the public hearing.
yeah. So is there any other last comments from staff? Any other last comments or questions from commission? If not, then I will close the public hearing. Review and possible recommendation to the Common Council regarding a request to consider a conditional use permit for a office land use at 67 East Walworth Avenue within the Business Central Zoning District. Applicant Denise Norris for Russ Blakely.
I'm sorry, I do, Mel, I'm sorry, one
That's
last
fine.
question here. It also says here the concrete slab, should not be used for parking. Do you mean they can't use it for like employee parking, or you just don't want it parking at all, you just want it
Who, me?
a city?
Oh, the city. I don't know. I don't know anything about them saying that.
You have this in here about the concrete slab that was originally constructed to accommodate the workshop, not be used for parking.
It was, I think Mark said you possibly get a car on it, but that wasn't really the intent that the purpose was, it was supposed to be for a structure. And so so that was, I guess if we want to use it for one space, if it can accommodate one space, but the idea is that as it goes forward, that really wasn't the intent of that property. So if we want to do that with the limited use to allow for parking of one vehicle, but I think there are probably some grade issues, Mark, and
I don't think the foundation was set up. I think one part of it doesn't even, has a partial wall in front of it.
Yeah, I don't think you could.
yeah.
I don't
So,
think-
so that's why I just thought it should be addressed as part of this because it was half done. The other option would have been to remove it, but who knows if it gets sold, someone might want to put in something that was originally posed at that location, so we didn't want to just recommend that we have them take it out.
So, can I ask a question of, what's the proposed second floor use as a rental by the applicant?
Originally it was requested that apartment, but that's a special use. So if you would approve the limited conditional use for office, then the applicant could use both the upstairs and the downstairs for office.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
What's the applicant's view?
They want to use it for an apartment, they would just go through the special use process.
And how is it historically been used? Has it been used as a divided residential?
Yeah, I think, when Russ first purchased it, he had established more of a unit upstairs. I believe someone lived there for a short period of time, and there was no use on the first floor.
Is it presently
Contract.
being leased?
I'm sorry?
Is it presently leased?
No.
It's vacant right now.
It's vacant. It's vacant at this time, and I'm currently really not sure it's ever going to be rented out or leased. In talking with the city, it has to be brought up to code and all, and that might be pretty pricey. And I'm just not sure Russ is ready to do that at this point in time.
So,
I did the permit at the same time, just in case he decided to go with it. It was done at one time.
and that was what I was gonna ask. You proposed office use and commercial apartment upstairs.
No office use upstairs. We prefer,
No, for
but
the
we can.
property.
Yeah, the property, yeah.
Right.
Apartment upstairs. yes.
And proposed use, office, administrative work for DR Plastics Inc., and
Right.
commercial apartment upstairs.
Mhm.
And so, that's, as we form a motion,
The the commercial apartment upstairs is not a conditional use. And so that's why it was not included in this, because it's a special use that's just subject to staff review.
Okay.
And so that's why if you use a limited conditional use for office, then they could use either floor, even though they don't intend to use the upstairs. They could use the either floor, or if they decide to pursue a residential, then they can just see T and go through a special use process for the upstairs apartment. And so that was the only reason it was eliminated, because it's not a conditional use and therefore not subject to the hearing or the same approval process.
thank you.
All right, does someone care to try to make a motion out of this?
I'll make a motion to approve the applicant's petition for zoning amendment for office use for 67 East Walworth Avenue, and allow any clerk corrections.
that a limited?
Yeah.
Conditional use.
Conditional
I'm
use.
sorry.
Conditional use.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, item 8.
No, 6.
Nope, 6.
Oh, that's right. Jeepers. Go back to 6. Public hearing, review, and possible recommendation of the Delavan Darien School District to consider a conditional use permit to allow for indoor institutional and group daycare land uses for Wildman School at 1001 East Geneva Street within the institutional zoning district. Applicant is Delavan Darien School District. I will open up the public hearing at this time. And Mark, you want to start us off?
Wildman School has been here longer than our zoning code, so part of the school district's proposal to use Wildman School for the daycare brought up an issue that they don't have any zoning approval actually for the school itself. What's in front of you would be a proposed conditional use permit that would not only allow for the group daycare operations to be happening at that property, but also for the school use itself, which, as everyone knows, has been going on there since 1951.
So, Mark, as a representative of the Delavan Darien School District, I assume, they're not gonna be the operator.
They are leasing the operations for the daycare.
Now, does the owner have to have the conditional use? And is it transferable?
This would be a recommendation as a regular conditional use permit for the property. So yes, it would be transferable.
So if they sold the property, they could transfer it.
If it's a regular conditional use permit, it stays with the property, yes.
Okay.
Do we want to keep it? as
So
a
here's
limited?
I mean, I don't know what we want to do, but.
Yeah, can I ask a question? Because there isn't a representative here from the school district, and we have these questions, I think it's kind of unfair to make you answer on their behalf unless they've given you specific authorization to speak on their behalf.
Well, if the question was an interpretation of our zoning code, but I appreciate your sentiment.
No, so, here are the facts we know, Jeff. I don't want to hold this up because of a technicality, but my point is that I think what is in the interest of the city is the city has to recognize the school district as a separate entity, and the city has to protect its zoning interest, right? And so the city could provide a limited conditional use for the period of time that the school district operates it, right?
Absolutely.
Without making other governmental bodies jump through hoops. But the city might have an interest on whether the school district would transfer the property.
Well, they can't transfer the business, it would stay with the property. They couldn't sell that to somebody else and then they would move their daycare to a different spot.
But they're not gonna operate this daycare.
I understand that.
So they could sell the business to the person who's operating the daycare.
Yes.
And unless it's a limited conditional use permit to the owner.
Absolutely.
That's my point.
Gotcha.
Commission have any questions?
Mark, do you have any, generally, the use is compatible with what it has been.
The property meets all of the requirements for daycare. It is fenced, it has plenty of room, landscaping setback from the highway.
And they have agreed that any alterations, because the state kind of trumps the rules related to.
They have met all their inspection requirements for
Right.
the daycare operation.
Right.
And they've had a daycare operation there. So, my granddaughter went to it, I mean,
Right.
before school and after school, so.
All right, any other questions? Staff, any other comments? All right, then I will close the public hearing. Item 6.2, review and possible recommendation of common council regarding a request to consider a conditional use permit to allow for indoor institutional and group daycare land uses for Wildman School at 1001 East Geneva Street within the institutional zoning district. Applicant is Delavan School District. Someone
Mr.
care to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I go ahead and make a motion for a limited conditional use permit for the proposed indoor institutional and group daycare land uses be subject to the submittal materials and subject to that any remodeling be per the provisions of the state building code and fire code, and number 2, any other requirements identified by city staff, plan commission, or common council.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second it.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, item 8, update on building and zoning related matters. Do you have anything to add?
I guess I would say our biggest thing is 1849 Hobbs Drive with the odor issues over at Strategic. I think everyone's kind of aware, or I would hope you'd be aware that we've had some issues over there. My department is keeping track daily as to if there's smells and issues and letting them know. They're gonna try to figure out some ways to fix that odor issue. I think we kind of met with some attorneys have met, and they're not saying, I guess there's an alleged odor according to them, but there's pretty much an odor there.
I thought they were going to install some kind of flavorful misting in the ceiling. I mean, seriously.
They did.
They did do that, and it
Oh, yeah.
still didn't help.
I think they might have changed their odor
Yeah, that was
lately,
last year.
but it's still not doing the trick. They're trying a bunch of different things right now.
Because Mayor Mel had the opportunity for all of us to go and meet with them there a long time ago. After they first were in operation, we did have an odor. They came up with a plan when Eric was still here. That was implemented. We went through probably a good 6 to 9 months without any incidences, and then this year again, it's been probably worse than it was then. So we are dealing with them, but I think T just want to make you aware of that because it is a conditional use permit, and there may be a point where it will need to come before the Plan Commission again for consideration of further action on that permit. So I think just at this point, we're dealing with them and hopefully it could be resolved, but I do have concerns that it is impacting the neighborhood, and taking it seriously.
Was the property owner across the street pursuing litigation?
Not that I'm aware of at this time. I know he's definitely let us know that he's not happy. He's not the only one.
Oh, no.
There's been
Right.
others, but he is probably the most boisterous, but he probably has the most to lose too, because he has people trying to rent things from him. But we've gotten complaints from other people as well.
What's their business there?
At Strategic Materials, it's recycled glass.
Oh, that
But
place,
they
okay.
bring in, if you see what they bring in, it's pretty
Yeah,
much
I-
garbage
Yeah.
with glass in it.
So is it just the manufacturing process itself that smells, or is it the exhaust from the building, or what's the smell from?
Well, the smell is, the recycled glass comes in, I believe that the recycled glass, the way that it comes in is based upon weight. And so it's actually mixed in with garbage, and they separate the glass from the garbage, and they keep the glass part, they recycle that, and then they have trucks come and ship the garbage away, I believe. So, but the majority of the smell, I believe, is just from garbage.
Does it inform us about the kinds of businesses we should locate where in the industrial park?
Well, this was with the conditional use, and I believe when they, I'll let Denise talk on this, because I wasn't here.
No, I'm not
And
talking
no,
about.
No, but
now.
that, one of the things is we're reviewing our conditional uses that will be presented to the Plan Commission probably in the next couple months here as amendment to the zoning ordinance. And those are things that especially that we're really looking at to make sure that we, just because it's becoming harder to not approve a conditional use, just to make sure that we, with all our conditional uses, that we feel comfortable that we would want to consider them in some of these zoning districts. So that is a review that's going on right now.
And then on other things, I think in around December, we should be able to go to a Burger King and a Taco Bell.
So, I had a question on 107 North 4th Street and just the process. So, there was failed stuck on the outside. It's been an ongoing issue. And you guys, at what point do we do what?
This is the hair salon, right?
Yeah,
So Shannon and myself did meet with, I believe it was Kathy, the owner. She is actually, they're in the process of,
and I don't care about that property. I'm
Okay,
talking
okay.
about the process.
well, right now, we've given her an extension.
Right,
Um,
which she gives to all kinds of people. It's a joke.
Right. So yeah, right now they've got someone that's gonna be re-roofing the building, and at the same time, they're gonna be trying to fix that stucco part. She is supposed to come in and pull a permit, and then I believe on that turret part where the stucco's.
But my point is, so what's your process? So you have a sheet that says all of this stuff has to be addressed. And then what do you do?
Well, we try to get people to comply to do it.
But, I mean, what's your process? Like weekly,
Well, we get-
nothing's happened.
So we give them a certain amount of time. We send out a letter that gives them so much time to comply and at least to contact us so we can at least try to work with them. She's responded to the letters. I believe she came to one of the meetings here.
Right.
And we gave her, I'd have to double check, but we gave her an extension in order to get this done. And I believe that she's planning on getting the roof redone before the end of October. I believe she already has the roofer lined up. And then she is wanting to, this is probably more than just the process, I guess, but she's wanting to put a different type of material on the wood shakes on that turret.
Right.
And I believe that we're checking into the downtown. She's supposed to give me some
So what
information.
you're saying is then there's a month of detail and stuff like that. and
Right.
then-
Basically, we don't really issue any, I mean, we could issue citations, but we try to work with them. Right now, we've given them extensions, we've got
At what
open.
point do you guys decide, I've had enough of these people? No, I know,
Yeah.
but my point is,
When they're not making any progress.
so let's talk about 523 East Walworth,
Mhm.
right? At what point, so they've now said, we're gonna start work on August 28th, right? So on August 31st, did they start work?
Oh, the fire department was there this weekend, so they were working on something. So they lit their porch on fire.
So my point is this. Um, um, because I've looked at this for a couple of years now, I think that the interesting point is that you guys are really nice.
Well, at some point, we do start giving citations, and that usually helps get things along. But it is a slow process. I mean, there's only so much, I guess, that our department can do, and then eventually, we got to get the judge to kind of back us up. I mean, sometimes we give citations, and they cry to the judge, and the judge lets them off on it, or reduces it by quite a bit. I don't know if, do you have any?
Well, thank you for helping me understand your world.
I mean, it's kind of I guess for the most part, we try to get them to work with us. Sometimes
Yeah.
some people, it takes a little longer, but I would say for the most part, most of the residents do try to work with us.
I would like to talk, Mel, if I could, ask another question about the vacant properties, right? So you guys got responses from 6 of 41, right? So the other 35, what is the next action?
The next action is to discuss with the council the vacant properties program, our ordinance as far as exemptions. One of our exemptions in our brand-new ordinance is that if you have your property for sale, you can be exempt, which everyone has said, well, it's vacant, but it's for sale. Which defeats the whole purpose of being able to do a safety inspection, because if the fire department can't get in to do the inspection.
So the answer is, the next action is to tighten the ordinance.
That is a recommendation, yes.
Because, and as you know, Mark, I've been a strong supporter of the city's action to deal with delinquent properties and difficult properties, so I'm happy to hear that.
Anything else on this?
Sorry.
Nope, that's right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second? I'll second it. I can do that, can I?
Yes, you can.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I forget, I can vote too, make motions. You're the chair.